Hello, lovely ladies. We are back for another episode of the Women's Empowerment Series. Today, I have Lisa Abramson. Lisa is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, executive coach, and founder of Wise Momma and Mindfulness Based Achievement. She has dedicated her life to inspiring others to achieve success in an entirely new way. She's been recognized as one of the world's top 100 influential leaders in empowering women, which is why I've brought her in for this. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay! And Lisa's outside, which I think is just such a great place to be for this interview. We were just talking about, she's down in San Francisco. It's still too cold where I am to be sitting outside. So Lisa, I'm really excited to have you here because I think what you talk about is something that is not talked about enough right now with women today that are trying to juggle both career and motherhood. And you wrote a really excellent book. And I'm just, how did you get to speaking about this yourself? What's your own personal story when it comes to the motherhood burnout?
Yeah, so for me, motherhood was something that I was really excited about. My husband and I had been married for a few years. We had decided we were ready to start a family. I was lucky and got pregnant pretty quickly. But shortly after I gave birth to my daughter, about 3 weeks after, I experienced postpartum depression and also postpartum psychosis, which is one of the most severe, but thankfully also the most rare of the maternal mental health disorders.
Wow.
It affects about 1 in 1,000 women. And I was one of the lucky few or unlucky few, depending on how you look at it. So I ended up with a psychosis, ended up being hospitalized because I was just had a really tough time. The sleep deprivation, the hormonal changes after birth, it led basically my brain to go offline temporarily. So wow. I ended up in the hospital because of that. And then in my recovery, really had to look at how there was, of course, the chemical factor, but there was also, what was I doing trying to strive so hard of doing everything perfectly, feeling this immense pressure to not only be a great mom, but just, everything had to be just perfect. So I'm basically flatlined after motherhood, unfortunately. And then it was a process of rebuilding after that.
And what were the symptoms that you were experiencing? Because I think a lot of women are underdiagnosed, or they think that, oh, this is because I'm not sleeping, or this is normal. I mean, I remember even for myself, I would constantly have images 24 hours a day of something happening to my baby. And I didn't realize till probably 8 months in that my doctor finally, when I told her, she was like, Karen, that's postpartum depression. And I'm like, what? So what were your symptoms?
Yeah. So, at first it was crying a lot. And then it was the loss of appetite. Even though, I was nursing, I was, not hungry, which is unusual for me. I'd say most of the time I have a good appetite. But then it was confusion. And for me, that started in mild cases. Like I was sleeping and I rolled over in the middle of the night and thought, this eye mask that I had on my face, oh, this is my daughter. And it freaked me out. And I thought, oh, that's just, being tired. And my husband and I kind of laughed about it. And then I couldn't figure out how to put the breast pump parts together, even though I'd used it 100 times already.
Wow.
It was like, how does this thing work? Like, I'm so confused. It was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I can't figure this simple task and I've done it before. And the confusion is the early stages of the postpartum psychosis. And then as I got more sleep deprived, then I started having paranoia, like thinking that the police were coming to get me, that there was snipers up on my roof. I mean, I just had lots of visions and auditory things. I was hearing, my baby crying when she wasn't crying. I was just, it sounds very strange, even as I retell it, because I think, how could this be happening to someone? But that was my experience, and it felt as real as talking to another person. Like the
Oh
delusions
my
felt entirely
God.
real. And of course, I'd never had any previous issue with a mental illness or anything of this sort. So it really terrified me. And I thought, at the lowest point, like, who am I without my mind? I'm
Mhm.
not Lisa anymore. Like, I thought, surely my career is over. Who's going to ever hire me to come into, Google's not going to hire me again to come in and be their speaker. I've lost my mind. I've
Mhm.
lost what makes me me. And in those low points, I was so terrified. And I thought, very sanely, in my opinion, I said to my mom and my husband who were there, I said, should I go jump off the Golden Gate Bridge? Like, is that going to make it all better? And I thought I was asking a good question. Like, that's how
Yeah.
unwell I was, because I thought, is that going to make it go away? That was all I was concerned about, was just like, make this terror stop. And that was
Wow.
when I was hospitalized, because my parents and my husband thought, we don't know what to do. This isn't the Lisa we know. And thankfully they did that. It saved my life.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's heartbreaking. I can't imagine. I mean, mine was just this little skiff in
Yeah.
comparison. And I've heard of other women going through similar times like that where they literally feel like they've lost their mind. And in a sense, they have. There's something that's, like you said, chemically, something is going on. Did the
Yeah.
doctors explain kind of what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, they said that the hormonal changes after birth and the sleep deprivation, like, it, in some people, it causes really, negative outcomes. And I'm one of the maybe, 10 or 15% of the population that really needs sleep. I mean, ever since
Mhm.
I've been a kid, my friends used to call me 8 o'clock Lisa because I would go to bed earlier than everyone else, like even in middle school and in high school. So I've always known I needed a lot of sleep, and but I didn't know that how much of my wellness was a factor of that.
Wow. Oh my.
Yeah.
But the positive outcome, clearly, is this sets you on a path
Yeah.
to educating other women about do you call it, the wise mama mindfulness?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, or the wise mama ways.
The wise mama ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things I found is that women tend to say, they'll, oh, here, I'm giving my child some, goldfish crackers. They go, oh, I'm such a bad mom. They're not organic. They're not Annie's organic, or they're not this. And it rolls off the tongue so easily to say, oh, I'm a bad mom. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I let my kids stay up late. I'm a bad mom. And I think that that's where something needs to change.
Yeah.
That whole conversation of like, why are we so self-deprecating? Like, what we need is compassion, and especially knowing, God, it's like the hardest job in the world to be a mom.
Oh,
Like,
it is.
it's the hardest job in the world. The requirements are always changing. You're never getting positive feedback, or very rarely, and you really don't know how you're doing. So this is totally different than the typical, overachiever woman, I'm sure, like yourself, that's like,
Yeah.
I set a goal, I do checks, and I get on my way to getting all gold stars, and then I hit, and then I go and I'm like, oh, I finished the race. Great. Good job, Lisa. It's like,
Yeah.
no, motherhood, it requires a totally different mindset. Being so nimble, and you just need to always check back and go, gosh, this is hard. And even, your kids can be mean, and acknowledging like, God, that hurts my feelings. They can be, they can tell you they don't love you, and like, that hurts.
Yes, yes,
So,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, because I work with women, and I mean, it happens on a daily basis where the woman comes in and she feels so guilty that about so many things about her, about being a mother. And it's
yeah,
like, I'm not doing enough, or, it is so constant. And I'd always tell women, like, the way we've built our society right now, like, we've fought so hard as women to earn our rights to work and to
yeah,
be mothers. But then at the same time, right now, we've shot ourselves in the foot, because
yeah,
we're trying to balance everything right
yeah,
now: motherhood, careers, husbands, the workload of the house. We still take the brunt of that in most cases. And
yeah,
it is taking a toll on our health. And there's
yeah,
something that has to switch here. And I think that women think, oh God, this is so hard. Why is this so hard? And I say to them, you have to remember 50, 100 years ago, it really was the village raising the child. All the moms were staying at home. You all raised your kids together. There was more community. The family members would stay involved. It's not so much anymore, is it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I would say too, that we tend to, as women, internalize when something feels off. You think like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And we go to self-blame. And I would say with postpartum, like, if you don't feel your best, like, it is not a personal deficiency. Like, you deserve to feel great and amazing. But you need to be a little vulnerable and saying like, this isn't about you, and there's nothing you've done wrong. There's nothing you could have done differently. Like, if you don't feel okay, like, you deserve to feel great. And I think that's such an important first step. Mm-hmm. And I'll say too, and now I have an 8-month-old. So when I had the postpartum psychosis, it was with my first daughter, Lucy. She's now 4.5. And with the second baby, I didn't have postpartum psychosis, thankfully, but I did experience mild symptoms of postpartum depression. And it's, it was hard for me even in there to say, I'm struggling. I did things differently. I had a much easier experience comparing the two, but it's still, I didn't feel my best. In January and February of this year, I felt like I was low energy. I couldn't motivate to do things, which was really unusual. I'm a go-getter. And I just felt really depleted and exhausted, even though my baby had started sleeping and I was getting enough rest. And I think it takes a lot of courage to step up and say, like, this wasn't because I didn't do motherhood right. It's just sometimes things happen and you need to get help.
And you need to get help. You need to ask for help, which I don't think very many of us are very good at, because
it's hard.
We're not supposed to ask for help. And I always say we're not meant to be doing this by ourselves, stuck at home in our house with our child. Like, what are some things that women could do then so actually, let me back it up. So, because it doesn't just have to be postpartum depression. Mm-hmm. It could we're also just talking about the hardships of being a mother, right? Yep. And that first time motherhood experience and second time and third time, it's a very challenging time in a woman's life. So talk to us about how it is we can be wise women in this situation.
Yeah, I think, it's beautiful to recognize your own needs and to, tell the people in your life what are your needs and how can they be met. And sometimes you can meet your own needs. For me, I was recognizing I need downtime, and that for me, that means meditation and quiet. Like, I'm someone who quiet brings me peace. It centers me. It's really important to me feeling my best. I feel like I have a lot of noise up here, and meditation helps a lot. So, but it required me to, have that conversation with my husband of I'm going to need 20 minutes on Saturday morning. Like, you're going to be in charge, and I need that, that break or that time out to just have some time to myself so that I can show up for the rest of the day the way I want to. And he's like, of course, you should definitely do that. But it still felt uncomfortable for me to say it the first time. Yes. So I was like, why don't you need 20 minutes of meditation? I need 20 minutes of meditation. Like, you make this comparison, or like, who am I? Like, I need downtime or I get overwhelmed. But I don't need to explain my needs. They're just my needs. So I think that and the truth is like, you're never alone in those needs or those experiences. So you feel like when you're, putting yourself out there, oh, I'm the only one who needs more downtime. But I think also, just be opening up with, a coach, a mentor, a mastermind group, or just your friends of like, hey, let's normalize it. Because I swear we all have needs and they need to get met, but we're not telling everyone like, hey, over the weekend I took a 2-hour nap. Like, because we're not bragging about that. We're bragging about like, I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so whatever, because we've conflated being busy with being important. So it feels scary to say like, no, actually, like I value myself and my self-worth, but I also need downtime. Like that, I do like take naps because I need downtime. Like that, for me, that's what I need to function. But I feel like people aren't shouting that from the rooftops. They're shouting like, I only slept 5 hours. And I'm like, well, I can't cut it. That's not for me.
Yes, women tend to value their worth on just how much they're doing in a day, and that has to stop. And I do feel like there is a movement happening where women are starting to speak about it more, and they're being more authentic with their friends. Like I had a great conversation with a girlfriend recently who was like, holy shit, I was so postpartum depression. Like I just wanted to drive myself off the road, and it went on and on and on. And I was like, wow, that's not good. Like, thanks for telling me though, right? Just that authenticity of, hey, I'm having a really hard time with it is so key. And like you said, getting into those groups, like finding that support, even though you might be feeling down and you're tired, there's nothing better than connecting with other women that are going through the same stuff.
Yeah. I completely agree. The tribe of women is so, so powerful. And that was why I was interested in being a part of this. It's just sharing that. If one person hears this conversation and says, you know what, I'm going to speak up. For me, I would say, I kind of tend on the overachiever perfectionist side. So saying I'm not okay, that is a radical act of bravery. I mean, it was really hard for me to admit that something is not okay because I grew up being like, I'm okay. This happened. I'm okay. And then to say I'm not okay, it's like, your critter brain goes nuts. It's like, you're going to die because you're not okay. And just knowing that, the mind is it's an interesting thing, and it's, but you got to, listen to your gut, or if you're, having bodily symptoms, or you have like a tight stomach or a knot, like what are those symptoms saying to you? Like, how can you honor your body and your needs? And I think it requires some slowing down. And like you were saying, the self-worth equated with doing, like the art of being a human being, not a human doing, is like, we got to work on that part, a little more being and a little less doing. But it's scary, and that's definitely not my normal state. I need to tend to being because I usually am just doing.
Right. And so is that how you came up with the saying mindfulness based achievement? Because you are an achiever. And so now how is it that you bring mindfulness into that? Why is that so important in being an achiever?
Yeah, I think it's so, mindfulness is critical for me to check in and make sure I'm enjoying the process. I can be too much out in the future thinking about how it's going to be, what it's going to be like, where I'm going, and stepping along that path to get there. So I think you can bring some of the tools and what I coach about are like what's, finding an aligned vision and your purpose to make sure you're actually charging towards the right goal. So I would say before I was running marketing at a technology company, and I was climbing up the ladder successfully, and I was charging ahead, but it was the wrong goal. I was selling things to people that didn't need more stuff on their mobile phones. Like, it was probably the worst fit ever, but I didn't know. And I was good at it because I worked hard. So it's finding something that you're aligned with, but then also saying like, am I enjoying the process? And the mantra I like to think about, and it's kind of cheesy because it's from a Lululemon ad, but it says mile 23. And I've ran a couple marathons, and this symbol of mile 23 is like, when you're in the middle, you're like, you're not done, you're partially through. Like, how are you going to feel on that mile 23? And that's what I like to think about. It's like, how am I enjoying what I'm doing while I'm doing it?
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yes. It's about kind of stopping in the process and slowing down, going, okay, whoa, let's just wait a minute and enjoy what we're doing. Because they actually say the process of getting to the goal is usually more satisfactory than the end goal itself.
I mean, absolutely. And if you're, an achiever, like I'm sure a lot of the women that you work with, like, we're so focused. As soon as we hit the goal, we're thinking of the next goal.
Yes.
So we don't even stop and celebrate we don't even celebrate the current goal. So like, you better enjoy the process, because and I think pause and celebrate the wins. We don't do that enough. And we should, because we deserve it.
Yes. Yeah. And so being in business, and you're a very new mother too, with an 8-month-old, I feel like this is the hardest balance for women to achieve right now, between career and motherhood, and feeling, and I know for myself, that tug of war of, am I giving enough time to my children? Am I giving enough time to my business? And I remember somebody saying to me once, one or the other will always have to suffer if you're trying to do both. And I thought, and usually it's both are going to have to suffer. What do you think?
So I try to be doing 100% what I'm doing. So it's like I'm in work mode, and then when I stop, I'm totally in mom mode. I know everyone has different ways of going about this, but my mantra of this year is just flexibility, because I think I'm going to do something. And then, this morning I woke up, I had a whole agenda of, meditations I'm going to record, scripts I'm writing, this interview, and my daughter's like, my ear hurts, so we're going to the doctor, it's just
right.
So I'm trying to just be flexible with, like, especially with, 2 under 5 years old. It's like, curveballs are coming up, and it is, a privilege, I think, that I have flexibility in my schedule, and my husband is, working and has a commute. So he's not able to do those last minute things, and I am. So I'm trying to not, be grateful for that instead of being frustrated. So
yes.
But it's, it's an evolution, and some days you win, some days you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think what's underutilized too, a lot of the time, is the husbands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I'm lucky. My husband's one of those guys that he totally does whatever needed in the house, doesn't need to be told. But I find that it's still, going back to that, how much I do makes me a better person or more appreciated. And that really comes into the relationship of trying to be, I call it the Wonder Woman syndrome.
Yeah. Yep.
And you're trying to do everything, and your partner, and I don't blame the men, because I think to myself, well, if they were doing everything, if like the roles were reversed, a lot of people do just are like, well, she's doing it all, so I'm just gonna slide over here. Like, why would they step in when they've never been asked, or they've never felt like you wanted the help? Because a lot of men will assume, like, oh, this is natural for the woman to want to stay at home with the baby all day and to clean and to cook. And it's like, well, no, not so much, and it's about asking for that help, isn't it?
I think so. And I think just, figuring out different systems, what works for you, for us, like, for example, with the doctor's appointment, it's, my husband takes our daughters to their appointments when they're the regularly scheduled appointments. But then emergency appointments, it's me. So you're just finding a balance of what works. Or a certain night of the week, he's in charge of dinner. Other nights, I'm in charge of dinner. And, sometimes having systems in place helps, so that you don't have to have that discussion, or, the back and forth is more frustrating than doing whatever the task is. Like, you always take out the garbage, because I hate taking out the garbage.
Yeah.
And then my husband said, are you teaching our girls that they can't be empowered and take out their own garbage? I was like, don't use that against me. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly. No, I tell my husband the same thing. There's certain things that I don't like doing. And so we can, I'll do the laundry, you mow the lawn. That's totally cool with me.
Totally. It's really funny. So you win some, you lose some.
Yes. And I think a problem that I have, that I see often, is the stay-at-home moms, or the moms that are at home with the newborn.
Yeah.
And because the man's out there working and bringing home the money, there's this preconceived idea of, well, when I get home, I've worked all day, I'm going to sit back and relax, because you've just stayed at home all day with the baby. Like, how hard can that be? And I'm always like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Work is so much easier than taking care of my child.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was very fortunate. My husband had 3 months of paid paternity leave. And he
Oh,
saw that you don't,
great.
there's like there's no other work that gets done. The work is taking care of the child,
Yeah.
which is 100% of your attention and time. And I think that's important. And it's sort of, at least in the Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, it's becoming a trend of giving more parental leave. And I think it's important because unless the husbands are there and seeing really what it's like, it's hard for them to know. I thought the same thing before I had kids. I don't know if you did, where you really are like, what do you do all day? Like,
Oh,
what
totally.
is
I
there to
did.
do? Like, you just don't know. And it's not being disrespectful. You just really have no idea until you've done it.
I even with my second kid, I still had it in my head. And then because they were 7 years apart, and I had this idea like, oh, I can't wait to be on mat leave and just hang with my baby all day. And then it was happening, and I'm like, right, this is not easy. This is not sit back and relax, especially if you have a baby that doesn't want to be put down ever, like my kid. Like it was like moving constantly, doing the shake and the breastfeeding.
Totally. It's so true. That there is a rawness to new motherhood unlike anything. You're like, I'm walking around, barely have a shirt on, like milk stains, like haven't showered. It's, and that's every day for the first few months. And then it turns a corner and gets a lot easier, but it still is, it's all in.
It's all in. And I've said this to my husband, and he agrees with me. It's like, if somebody asked you, well, what do you do all day? You couldn't even really explain it. So I think that's why it's not really talked about a lot. It's but you just know that you don't get rest. You're not sitting around being lazy anymore. No, it's work. You just can't really describe it. Even with my 4-year-old, it's like that. When he's around, it's just constant, even because he just doesn't stop talking, right? Follows you around.
So true. So
true. So if a woman is feeling like she does have a little bit of postpartum depression or a little bit, what would be the steps that you would advise or that you talk about in your book in order to get help? Like, what are some really great tools that people can get started with? And for one, I think everybody should obviously read the book too. And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what that's about as well.
Yeah. So, I think the first thing you can do, is share with your, family or someone that you trust how you're feeling. And then I would say the first step is to find a therapist, especially one that is specializing in maternal mental health would be ideal. So finding a therapist or a psychiatrist that you can work with. And I think that there's a lot of preconceived notions about postpartum depression, like, oh, well, if I have to take medication. That's not always true. You can, sometimes therapy is all you need. Sometimes you need therapy plus medication. So there's different solutions there. I have a meditation challenge that's 5-minute meditations. It's for 30 days. I think meditations on self-compassion can be really helpful.
Yes.
And this meditation challenge is just 5 minutes a day so that it's not overwhelming. You could do it while you're nursing. You can just put in your earbuds. And I think just having a little time and space for yourself can be really helpful. But I definitely feel like if you're experiencing symptoms of postpartum depression, like, there's no need to suffer in silence. You don't get a badge if you grit through it. You
get the badge if you go for help, actually. Then we'll give you a badge.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't need to suffer. There's no reason that you need to, and help is out there and it works well, and it's only temporary. When you get treated, the symptoms go away. But if you don't get treated, it can last for a year or years. I mean, it doesn't go away. So I would say absolutely reach out, and probably a therapist is your best first bet, and they could tell you if you need a psychiatrist after that. Some people go to their OBs, or they're not qualified in the mental health facilities the way that a therapist or a psychiatrist is. So I would say get specialized help, and you're more likely to get a comprehensive treatment plan.
Yeah.
But, I'll say too, this time around, because the symptoms were mild, I used a naturopath and acupuncture, and I started training for a half marathon, because for me, running is very therapeutic, and I needed to get the endorphins flowing, and just, it helped me feel more like me. So I had kind of milder symptoms, and with therapy and acupuncture and naturopath and running, I was able to feel better. But the last time I wasn't, and it was, medication and a hospitalization. So there's different levels.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually, just because I'm a nutritionist
Yeah.
working from a functional medicine
Yes.
view of postpartum depression. It is extremely common for women postpartum, especially the more kids they have too, especially if they have them closer together, because our nutrient levels get so depleted, and we're going into pregnancy nowadays with nutrient deficiency. And with every kid, like I said, closer together, the worst is they're sucking all these nutrients out of us. And so that's causing nutrient deficiency. But because of that, we get serious hormone imbalances. And because we're just of our environment, and we're waiting for longer to have children when we're in our 30s, when we're supposed to be having kids in our, teens and 20s biologically, that the way it's affecting our hormone balance is extreme for some women. So what's happening is they get this plummet of the hormone progesterone is quite common. And that causes postpartum depression. I have a few women that just were like weeping, crying nonstop, depressed. And it was literally within a few days of getting on some bioidentical progesterone that they felt instantly better from it. And one woman, it was like 4 years she suffered, and she got to the point where she was suicidal. And I said, you have to go, as a family member, I said, you have to go to the doctor. You have to do something about this. And it was her progesterone. And same thing, within a few days of being on it, she felt like a different person.
Exactly. So I think that that's so true. And this time around, I was definitely, I did my blood panel, and I was depleted, and my protein levels and all sorts of things were off. And last time, I had adrenal fatigue in addition to the postpartum stuff. So, I think reaching out and getting help. And I think it is, it's your birthright to feel good. You deserve to feel good. And that's the best way you can give to your family, is to just, you deserve to feel good and take care of yourself. So I think, and it's not just one or the other too. I think, like what you were saying, it's, you could go see a therapist, but then you can also address the nutrition piece. And for me, it was all of those factors. I think I had this, very severe case with postpartum depression and psychosis, was hospitalized, but I was back at work 5 months after birth. I also had I think pretty rapid recovery, because I was doing acupuncture. I had a naturopath. I was exercising. I was sleeping at night. I was on medication. I was doing therapy. I was like, I'm going to just go knee deep in all of the different things, because I wanted to get not only better, but, be stronger for my daughter.
Exactly.
So you just got to, try different, and you get to be your own judge of what's working and what is supportive to you.
Yeah. And so in your book, Wise Women, is it a step-by-step kind of process like that, where you tell women how to go and get help?
Yeah. And it talks about, basically it's even, it's really about maternity leave. It's about those early few months, when you have a baby, and it's designed with this overachiever perfectionist in mind. So one of my favorite parts of the book is there's a checklist for new moms, for your maternity leave. And it says, if you do one of these things in the day, like, you've got your gold star, you've done a good job. And it's like, you ate a meal, or you fed your child, you took a shower.
Yes.
And, it's sort of, because I needed that reframe when I had my second baby. Like, I forgot. I thought, oh yeah, now I can still juggle all these things. And you have to really slow down and stop and recognize, when you're on that leave, when you're in the, in it with a newborn, just, basically surviving the day and taking care of your basic needs and your child's basic needs. That's all you need to do. Nothing else. Not answering emails, not answering phone calls. No. So just give yourself permission to do less, and know that over time will make you stronger.
That's the kind of book that I feel like every woman that has a baby should just leave the hospital with. It's like, here's your manual, instead of the manual that just tells you what the markers are for what your kids should be achieving at certain ages. It should more be, here, read this and take it very seriously.
Yeah, I think so. And that, you're your own, you know yourself best, and you
Yeah.
need to be your own advocate. I think, um, you know, parenting used to be, it's turned into like an action verb of like all encompassing and doing, same with mothering, like doing so much. And also looking to experts, like you're the expert of your children, like you, and especially your baby, even if you don't feel like it, you know them better and you know what they need. So also not being afraid to, don't forget about yourself. And I remember when my daughter Lucy she was losing weight, I was having trouble breastfeeding, and they set me on every 2 hours you need to feed her. So breastfeed her, then pump, and then
Oh,
clean the pump parts, and then feed the express milk. And then it basically gave me 10 to 15 minutes in between those 2 hour cycles. And because her pediatrician told me to do it, I never stopped to be like, hey, like mom needs a timeout. This is too much for me. I'm falling apart. I just thought, oh, this is what I have to do. This is what the expert said. So
right.
remember that, like, you need to listen to your own gut too.
Yeah, I think so too. That's great advice. So, and do you coaching for women as well?
I do. So I
Yeah.
am an executive coach. I do one-on-one coaching and group coaching programs. And then I teach workshops at companies like Cisco and Google, and small companies as well in the Bay Area.
About
And
postpartum?
so I talk about mindfulness and creating sustainable success. So it's all interesting enough. It's the same tools, either
Yeah.
applied to motherhood or just applied to your work and professional life. And yeah, so I teach those around in the Bay Area, around the country. And the end of this year, I'm going down to Ecuador as well to teach my first international workshop. So I'm looking forward to
Wow.
that as well.
So there, if you want to find her, just go to Ecuador.
Yeah.
It's a good
Yeah, my
excuse to
website is
travel.
probably a little cheaper to visit.
Yes, and you're at lisaabramson.com, which I
Yeah, that's the
will
best.
put the link in the show notes. So if you guys want more from Lisa, that's where to go. I suggest listening to her TED Talk as well as purchasing her book, which is called The
Thank you.
Wise Women, right? It's not Wise Mama,
It's
it's Wise Women.
the wise mom. Yeah, the wise mama guide to maternity leave.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. I think this is a very under discussed topic. So I really appreciate your insight on it. And I really hope that, and I know so, that you've actually probably helped quite a few women with those words that you said.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Thanks.